Hey, my name's Kulbir Colin Singh Dillon. Welcome to TTalks. Find out why I would love to know more about Wales.
Hello and welcome to another episode of TTalks where we dive into the stories behind the leaders shaping our world. I'm your host TJ Walia, and in this episode, we're thrilled to welcome Kulbir Colin Singh Dillon, a titan in the world of automotive innovation and smart technology. As the President of ImagineQ Inc. and Chief Innovation Officer at TBDC and The Beehive incubators, Colin's career spans over 25 years at the forefront of the mobility industry. His visionary leadership has spearheaded initiatives like Project Aero, setting new standards for sustainable mobility. With a knack for driving advancements alongside major OEMs such as Toyota, GM, and Stellantis, Colin's expertise also shines in cybersecurity and digital transformation of manufacturing. Beyond his professional achievements, Colin's passion extends to cultural and community contributions, notably as a best-selling author and co-founder of the Sikh Heritage Museum of Canada. His work has earned him a spot in Automotive News, Canadians to Watch, and the prestigious Queen Elizabeth II's Diamond Jubilee Medal. Colin, welcome to TTalks.
Thanks for having me, TJ. Long time coming, right?
Oh yeah, it's an absolute pleasure. I've been super excited about having our conversation, Colin, and just the things I've just gone through listed about your journey. I mean, Project Aero, Diamond Jubilee Medal, contributions to some significant OEMs, being the judge of the Canadian Auto Show. Like, there's a lot of things that happened there, and then also obviously the co-founder of the Sikh Heritage Museum as well. I mean, there's a lot you've done. Like, can you help unpack some of that journey for us to help us understand how all that came together?
Well, first of all, I'm a lot older than I look. So that's how it all happened. So it's quite easy to do when you're 54 this year. Look, it's been simple for me because I've had a vision ever since I arrived here when I was 23, 24. And it was to be able to get to the top of the mountain in whichever sector I was actually going to end up being. And truth be told, I never thought I'd be in automotive. I actually thought I would be in medical, in the medical sector. Designing medical equipment is where my focus was at university, as well as one of the first key jobs I got here in Canada. But I think because I've always used, which, it's taken me several years, it's taken me wisdom, to understand that it's what we call a human-centered approach to thinking. It's design thinking. But because of the tool of design thinking, I think that's allowed me to try and pave the way, solve problems in both academic verticals, in my career in industry, as well as the kind of projects I do outside of work to help the community.
Very cool. I had no idea that you went from that medical or healthcare side of things to automotive. Help me understand that pivotal moment. What transpired that made that change for you? And you said, hey, this is something I'm going to do and I'm going to stick with.
Well, as a young individual, I was picked up by a company called Excel Tech, and I was designing ECG and EEG machines. And our units were laptops. We were cutting billets of aluminum in 97, I think 4 years before Apple started to cut billets of aluminum for laptops. And so we were making this portable EEG or EEC devices to be used by, clinical practitioners. I reported directly to the CEO, and it was a great relationship, but it just felt like if this was the top of the mountain, then I felt I have to look at something else. And so that's exactly what I did. I chose to do something else as opposed to, being in the medical sector going forth. And that really led me to going back to the UK, doing my postgrad as a teacher, and then coming back to Canada. And that's where I accidentally isn't the right word. That's where I was forced to, by my wife, to apply for a job at an automotive company. And that started my journey in the automotive sector.
Wow. So that's quite inspiring. So there's a couple of things that I'm going to dive into there. One is, irrespective of the mountain you were climbing, you wanted to be at the top. So, it didn't matter if it was automotive or medical or any other field for that matter. And from that aspect alone, there's a lot of learnings that we can look at as, you know what, it doesn't matter what you start off with, but it's that journey that you go through and the goal or the vision that you have. Like, talk to me about that, because a lot of people get intimidated and say, this isn't my core field, or this isn't my industry, this isn't my background. And they're like, okay, this is just mediocre. But you took a whole different approach to that.
Look, I try and talk to younger folk today about thought leadership in 10,000 hours and the importance of being able to become a thought leader in your area of choice, passion, your area of expertise, your area of academic qualifications. That is key, that we understand that work is really a place we go to earn a living and to grow as individuals. And why wouldn't we all want to invest in those 10,000 hours? Why wouldn't we want to progress the work we're doing, at the company or the organization we're with? And so for me, there was always that hunger from a very young age to want to better myself. I also had a lot of complexes personally where I felt I was less than. Always never the smartest kid in the class, never the hardest working kid in the class, never the fastest on track and field, never the one able to jump the furthest, never the one able to pick up Punjabi in Punjabi class the quickest. And so I knew my place. I knew that I had certain challenges when it comes to learning. But I also knew I had this inherited, and I'll say it's inherited because I see it in my father and I see it in my mom and I see it in my brother. I had this drive to want to progress and do better. And I think now, 30 plus years later in my career, if I've got to certain places, it's because of the drive. It's because of the implementation of being a thought leader.
Very, very inspiring, very incredible, Colin. The drive is a big aspect that I think when I'm having conversations with a lot of the youth as well, it's like, oh, this is just a job, or I'm waiting for the next big thing. Big thing never comes. Like, you have to go and find it and build it and find those opportunities. Like my career, even at Microsoft and any other organization that I worked at, my father always said to me, he goes, whatever job you do, treat it like it's your own business. And when you do that, you're going to go out of your way to find different things, uncover opportunities. And that's exactly what I did. I was even managing the education sector at one point, which is not the most exciting of sectors to manage when you're in a role. But we uncovered some interesting opportunities only because the drive was there to go find something, uncover something, build something, and have some sort of impact, not for anyone else, but for your own self. And once you start doing and living like that, I think, you start climbing different mountains, as you say, and inspiring on different journeys. So I'd love to get your perspectives on that a little bit more.
I'm just pleased to be a part of the Toronto Business Development Centre, TBDC and The Beehive. We're an incubator for tech startups. Our focus is the SUV program, where international startups can arrive in Canada through a visa program that the federal government runs. We have offices in Toronto and one here in Brampton, where I'm today. I'm at the Beehive, as you can see behind me. And look, it's a great opportunity for me to be around some brilliant minds, the likes of Vic Corona, who's the chairman of this organization, and others. It's just amazing. But it's also wonderful to be around tens of startups, and we're agnostic to their technology. So, a gentleman of my age, and I'll come back to my age, I've joined this because I want to learn from my peers and my colleagues. And I also want to learn from these startups. Some of them are pre-revenue and some are revenue generating. And I think that's been one of my approaches, is that I've always wanted to make sure that just because I may have a fancy title, it doesn't mean I know any better. I've always been a sponge to learning. And I always try and approach, my areas of, work with that same mentality where I'm able to learn from my colleagues and I'm able to hopefully grow, both in my expertise, but also in my delivery, again, around thought leadership.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. I want to touch a little bit on decision making, because a lot of the things that you're doing, Colin, has to do with key decision making at the right times. And in the roles that you've had, especially in the innovative sector, if you will, some of those decisions can go either direction, right? So how do you handle that decision-making aspect for one, but also deal with the risk and the stress associated with this may or may not work the way you envision or plan it to be?
Look, it's a great question, and I think it's one that needs to be kind of, explored deeper. For me, look, I launched a car company called Nika Automotive with a friend from Las Vegas and a friend from Michigan in 2018. And we then transferred that to Project Arrow, which I led from 2020 until the build completed in 2022. And look, everyone's giving it accolades as a project, but people don't realize that we were a very small team running that project. The staff alone at the APMA, we were less than a dozen. And then we brought on some great global experts to help us. But the project itself and the timelines and the delivery really fell on my shoulders to make sure that the vehicle was built and completed under budget on time. And we were able to do that with money in the bank, as they say. And the approach to doing this, TJ, from my end, was to, again, look at program management and not take a certification in PMP, and no offense to those that have the certification. But for me, using design thinking, I was able to extrapolate a typical weekly agenda, and I would break it down into days and hours in order for us to know, first of all, if we were heading in the right direction on a weekly, daily basis. 2, contingency planning. So something's inevitably going to go wrong. I've never built an electric vehicle before in my life, and some of the team had, but we were asking for favors. We were getting volunteered support. We were getting parts that were off the shelf and not necessarily made for the vehicle. So things were potentially going to go wrong. And so what were your contingency plans 1, 2, and 3? And so those are some of the key elements I used to run the project to make sure we had $44,700 left in the build budget in the bank, to make sure it was finished on time, and to make sure it looked as good as it does. And so those same best practices can be used in any project. It doesn't have to be a physical car. It can be done if you're developing a SaaS piece of software. It's how do you approach a project? And, I always, I pull my hands out here, because for me, if that's the size of the object, then break it down into edible slices. Don't think you can consume that pie in a whole. Break it down to pieces that are edible and don't give you digestion.
I love that. And that's how we have to look at a lot of things, is one piece at a time, right? Because if you try to your point, do the whole thing, it becomes overwhelming. People get stressed out. They're not sure what the next steps look like. But if you really start breaking it down and start looking at it from a logical perspective, you can start piecing the puzzle together, if you will.
And there's software available today. There is software available today that can help with this. Now, some of the software is getting, AI factors added in, which kind of have another level of intelligence. So, yeah, there are tools available.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with the tools being available, it still goes back to that vision. If you don't have the vision, then what are you piecing together, right? So there's that critical aspect of seeing what your end product looks like. It might not be 100%, it might not be perfect, but you're like, this is what it's supposed to do, and this is what it's supposed to look like. And then from there, you start giving life to this object, right? So that vision is absolutely critical. So it's not a matter of just using any application or software. Vision combined with the tools, combined with the tenacity to go and do it, is what really gets you there.
Yeah, I agree.
A couple of things I want to touch on. Work-life balance. I mean, these kind of projects take a lot of time and energy, and even with all the things that you're dabbling in as well. What does that look like for Colin? How do you manage that?
Look, it's had many journeys and pathways. The concept car project, I literally had to sit my wife down and say, from October through to December, I may be physically at home, my body, but my mind is going to be elsewhere 100%. So please forgive me, because I will be distant. I will be in another place. And truth be told, that's exactly what was going on for about the final 3 months of the project. But prior to that, look, I've got two young ones, a 23-year-old who's moved to Montreal, and my daughter's just finishing her first year at the University of Birmingham in the UK. But I managed to run, for example, at ABC Technologies, I ran 4 departments there, global advanced product development, R&D, marketing and communication, the design studios, and the last department I was given was corporate social responsibility. But I did all of that, for nearly a decade, depending on which departments I was running. But I did it with the time to take all of my kids to all of their extracurricular. So both my kids, black belts in Taekwondo, one of them's gone further. One's a lifeguard in swimming. The other one's, maybe not gone as far. Rep soccer, and beyond. And so all of that was my responsibility. And so I made sure, and even, I'm sure if you ask my wife, co-founding a museum takes a lot of time and effort. Lecturing at colleges takes time and effort. I made sure I did all of my extracurricular projects, even writing my book. I did them, TJ, and I would tend to delve in the extracurricular stuff for myself after 9:30 p.m. And so once I'd done my duty for my family, once I'd made sure my wife was happy and she was about to fall asleep, my laptop was on the side. I would whip up the laptop and I would sit for 2, 3, 4 hours and do my stuff. And so that's how I've managed, things personally. And look, I think it works because we're celebrating 30 years this year, this month, actually. Wow. And kids haven't thrown too much crap at me at the moment, so I think they're pretty happy. And so that's been mine. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. Can it do could I redo things in a different way? 100%. But that's what I've done to get to where I've got to today.
Yeah, and I think we're hearing more of the buzzword changing from work-life balance to work-life integration, right? We have to find what fits for us so that we can accommodate those things, because you don't want to be missing out on that, on the development of your kids and the family. You could be away essentially all day if you wanted to. I remember a friend of mine said to me when I was going through my own challenges with balancing work-life, and he said to me, he goes, TJ, you could be working in this role for the rest of your life, 24 hours a day, and the work won't end. So you need to make those decisions to stop these things and go back into spending time with your loved ones and your family and ensuring those initiatives are taken care of. So, and it holds true for anything we do. Like there's always going to be something else that we're going to work through. But as we age, as we grow older, those opportunities are not going to come back.
If I could shed some wisdom on younger folk who are settling down, having children, thinking of having children. Both mine have kind of flown the nest to an extent. And I wish I would have cherished their time around the house more. I wish I would have been there living in the moment, in the now, more than I think I did. And some may say, well, no, you seem to have done a lot. I think I could have done more. Because to me, everything we're doing, I work hard for who? For my wife and for my family. I do all of these projects simply to prove to my children, look, if your dad can do it, you guys are way smarter than me. You've got your mom's brain trust. And so I'm able to do it. You guys should knock it out of the park. And I've literally tried to do a lot of my projects and to achieve what I have to literally be able to show not only my children, look, whoever I speak to, whenever I keynote, is to be able to say, if I can do it, folks, anybody can. And so that's really been core for my journey.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. It's it really comes down to people looking at other leaders and saying, wow, they must have had a different life, or they must have done something different. And it's not. It's everyone has a journey. Everyone has a journey that is unique. And if we leverage that journey, those experiences, everyone has a stage to speak on. There's a lot to share through each one of our journeys, right? And there's so much to take away from all of that we can start applying to our own lives. You mentioned, absorbing things as a sponge and not being the smartest in class. That was my journey as well, right? It was I wasn't the coolest kid in class, and coming in from immigrant families, you're trying to figure out what your base is. One of the things that, and I'm sure you faced as well, is that we never fit in. And not fitting in was also unique. So for me, never fit in. I went to an all-Jewish school, right? I was the only turban-wearing Sikh in the classroom, in the school rather, not even, in the grade. And we had maybe two more. But when I would go to India and visit family, because of the way I tied my turban, the way I spoke, I never fit in there. So it was just like you never fit in, even in the country that you were born in, to the country that you're growing up and being raised in. I had a comment I think it was a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking to someone where someone said to me, where are you from? And I said, Canada. Like, this is home. This is where I'm from. And then they said, no, but your accent, it's so beautiful. Like, you speak normal. I'm like, what does that even mean? Right. So to get that kind of feedback, you still know, even so many years later, we don't fit in. You don't fit in the same way, because fitting in isn't necessarily about how we feel, it's how others make you feel. And so it's been a challenge from that perspective. And I think I'll probably touch on something else from our community aspect. There's a lot of new immigrants coming in, and they're not being allowed to fit in, essentially, because of what's happening, right? Even though they've sacrificed everything that was back home to come and get another opportunity, instead of embracing it, or embracing them rather, there's a lot of hostility against them, and it's becoming toxic, I would say. So what are your thoughts around this, given that you've been a part of the community and helping the community as well?
It's a difficult question to unpack, TJ, in the sense that there are multiple facets. The first facet I would address is the way we, the Punjabi Sikh community who have been here for a generation or two, are treating new Punjabi Sikh immigrants. I think we aren't embracing them the way we should have or could have. So I think there is that kind of separation of, they look like us, they speak like us, maybe not, they dress like us, but their personalities seem to be quite different. So I think there's been that internally. And then, yes, externally, I think maybe because of the pressures of making money, sending money back, because a lot of them are borrowing money to come here. Some of them are getting into nefarious things. There's more thefts. There are more brown faces on TVs than there ever have been in my 30 years here in Canada. And look, we can point a finger at media and say, you're quick to kind of point us out when somebody's stolen a car or done a break into a house. But how about when we're, providing food through Seva Food Bank to tens and thousands, and why aren't you there every quarter? Look, that's a difficult one, because I think the UK is very much maligned in how they represent minorities. I think we do a better job here in Canada. I truly feel that, and I can back it because I've lived in both places. But there are challenges we're facing. Look, the economy, the cost of living, and it's human nature for us to blame the new ones. And so not only are Canadians who aren't from Punjabi Sikh backgrounds potentially blaming them, but our community is as well internally, truth be told. So rather than push them away, how can we bring them closer? And these are some of the conversations I'm having with other community leaders, is to say, How can we make sure that their transition is a smooth one, as opposed to, well, they're the problem and, it's not our issue.
Absolutely. And the reality is that we've all been there, Colin. Any immigrant that's come in, whether it's from our community or not, trying to create a new base, a new home for their family, try to fit in, try to understand the culture. There's a lot of challenges. And to your point, if we're not going to go and help our community, extend our hand and say, hey, listen, this is not how it's done. Let me show you how things are done here. It's not the same over there. Rather than saying, hey, why are you doing that and questioning it? Why are we not taking that first initiative to support them, extend our hand out and help them? And I wish growing up that someone was there for me at that point. But there was a lot of things that we learned, but that community wasn't that strong. Our community is very strong today. And despite that, we're seeing these challenges, right? So I think there's a lot more we can do as a community.
Well, look, you may get an exclusive here, depending on when this is aired, but this Friday, the 12th, the Sikh Heritage Museum, which I'm a co-founder of, and I've been the president and chairman for the last 10 years on and off, I've officially resigned. So there's the breaking news. And I've been trying to resign, TJ, for the last 3 years, ever since I turned 50. Because
Wow.
I had made it clear to the board and to everyone around me that when I founded the museum, I was 44 and I was happy to lead until I was 50. And 50 was a threshold in my head because at 50, I became an uncle. I became that, the uncle generation. I always had an issue with uncles running institutions in our community. And so I was not going to be a hypocrite, and I'm not going to be a hypocrite. And that's why I'm happy to have served, but I'm also delighted to step down and to support from the back and let the youth, let the younger folk come up, people in their 20s and 30s and 40s. And I don't think we've done enough of that, TJ, in our religious institutions. We haven't built many other institutions. We've just simply grown our religious ones, and we haven't focused on community. We haven't focused on innovation. We haven't focused on problem thinking. There's a word in Punjabi and Hindi called jugaad. It's the MacGyver, right? We have a DNA in our systems from India where we are innovators by nature. Yet you would have thought we would have set up some kind of institutions to try and support the greater community with those and be the leaders. And so I'm trying to lead by example. And on Friday, as I say my farewell speech, I will reference the fact that, hey, I'm an uncle, and it's time for uncles to step down and let the next generation step up.
I love that, Colin. And we see that all the time because we see that generational gap sometimes. But I would argue in this respect that there's a lot that people like you can provide with that kind of thinking shows that you're already embracing the next generation's thinking. And so to be able to support them through all of this and giving up that seat, essentially, which a lot of our community members fight for, it speaks volumes of who you are and what you're trying to accomplish for our community.
Look, we can talk about my book. I've got a whole bunch of chapters in there about ego. And so if I'm writing a book to help people, if I'm spending time to break down my ego over the last 2 decades, it means nothing. I don't need to be at the front. I really don't. I don't even need to be on the table. You know where I am. You know my number. You've got my email. Whenever you need me, happy to support. But we have to start to bring our youth forward, especially because the digital transition, TJ, that you and I are living through and we're a part of, that digital transition can also support our institutions as well, and the changes, the way we meet, the way we communicate, the way you implement ChatGPT. There are so many things that could benefit our community and our institutions. But when you've got uncles like me and others wanting to kind of hold on to that seat, please don't let it go. No, it's mine. Hey, we're up for failure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Colin, that's been incredible. I love all the aspect, love your way of thinking. And this all goes back to the first thing you said when we started this conversation. It was really having that vision. And when you have clarity on what that vision is and what it looks like, that also helps you define what your role is as an individual, what other roles are going to be. And again, having the clarity to say, you know what, now it's time for me to step away from this and give that someone else so they can now bring in their vision and help grow and take things to the next level. So love that. At this point, my friend, we're at the point of going into our rapid fire segment. So this is where it's exciting. We're going to throw some questions at you, and you're going to respond with the first thing that comes to mind. So don't overthink it, but the first thing that comes to mind. You all set for this, Colin?
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right, let's do it. Tea or coffee?
Tea.
The book that you're currently reading that's inspiring your leadership journey?
I can't remember the full title, but it's about Steve Jobs' team that developed the iPhone and the iPad.
Okay, very cool. Your wake-up time?
About 6:30.
Okay, okay, that's interesting. Electric or gas vehicle for you?
Onto my second generation, about to buy my third EV.
Okay, awesome. Your inspiration, where does it come from?
Her name's Satinder Kaur Dillon. She's my wife.
All right, and my last question. If animals could talk, which would you want to have a conversation with?
A whale.
A whale. Okay, I'm going to dig into that one a little bit. Why a whale?
Been around as a species for what's probably hundreds and thousands of years. They're mammals like us. They have hyper intelligence. We just haven't cracked their language and communication. They have families. They live in communities. The stories they could tell of what they've seen, and they've seen a lot. You know, they spend a lot of their time below the water, but they do definitely peer above the water. And they just seem majestic, deep, souled beings. I happily feel a connection to them.
Wow. That is deep. Incredible. Well, Colin, thank you very much again for sharing your valuable insights and experiences with us today. It's been a true pleasure having you.
TJ, thanks for having me on TTalks or TTalks. Really appreciate it.
That's it. Oh, it was a pleasure, my friend. Thank you, Colin, for sharing your valuable insights and experiences with us today. It's been a true pleasure having you. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to TTalks for more conversations with the leaders who are shaping our future. Until next time, keep on inspiring.